Welcome to Moms with a Call. We're not here to preach, convert, or fix you. We're here to listen.
We're Mackenzie
And Rebecca, two women with messy stories, honest questions, and a quiet hope that maybe Jesus looks a lot more like love than we were ever shown. If you've ever wondered if there's a place for you in all of this, there is. Come, have a seat at the table. You're safe here. You're welcome here. Let's begin.
Okay, so before we dive into part 2 of my testimony, I just want to do a quick trigger warning, just like I did in the last one, that my testimony touches on some topics like emotional abuse, family betrayal, religious hurt, prenatal and postpartum trauma, physical and mental health disorders, and suicidal ideation and thoughts. So, if any of those areas are especially tender for you right now, please take care of yourself as you listen. Feel free to pause or step away or even skip certain parts of this if you need to. My heart in sharing this is not to relive pain for myself or for you, but to show you that there's truly no place that's too dark, too broken, or too messy for God to reach us. I pray that as you listen, you feel seen and known and reminded that healing is real, even if it takes longer than you think. I am proof of that. So, alrighty, deep breath in. Here is part 2. Okay, so I am still in the dark, by the way. My power is out, which of course it is. Luckily, I have my computer fully charged and I have a hotspot on my phone. So we are finishing this testimony. Whether I want to or not, it is being finished. In 2020, I ended up meeting my husband and I actually got married. So think about this, right? I break up with a guy that I've been dating for 8 years. My dog almost dies. Then I go through, with the rest of the world, a freaking pandemic. I am on full lockdown. Then I meet a guy, get engaged, and married all in the same year. Isn't that insane? I look back on it, and I even tell my friends and family this. I'm like, why did you guys not be like, whoa, are you okay? I mean, I'm so glad they didn't, because literally Evan is the best person in the entire world. And I truly can't even imagine life without him. He is my rock. He is my best friend. He is the best freaking partner, the best freaking dad. So we were in the same class during the spring semester. And I remember moving home and all the classes were online, right? So this is in March. Teaching went completely online. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. I literally got to live with my family for 3 months following the hardest breakup I've ever had in my life, right? Like, I had kind of dated people, not really though. Like, I mean, I think maybe one, I wouldn't even call it dating. Like, I kind of kissed other guys in high school and kind of had little relationships when we would break up for a week or two here or there. But this was my main relationship, really the only one I would call a relationship. And so losing that and then acknowledging the horrible past 2 years, 3, honestly, probably 5 years of that relationship. Honestly, who knows? Maybe even 6. Okay, I don't want to be dramatic, but it was not great. At least the last 2 years, if not the last 3 or 4. And so, getting to be with my family and then also explore churches online because I couldn't even go in person was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so flash forward, we're taking this class together and I'm going to go and actually, I think we did talk about meeting in our episode, them coming out with another episode with Evan, and we talk about how we met and everything. So it'll be in that one, our actual story of we met at a conference just before COVID, but he was dating somebody. So we didn't go anywhere because he was dating somebody else. And I had just broken up with my boyfriend. So I was certainly not ready. But he ended up towards the end of the semester. So I guess in May, I followed him on Instagram, and within a few minutes, he followed me back. And the rest was history, pretty much. You can go listen to that other episode if you want to hear more in depth. But we actually dated on Zoom for the first like 3 months of a relationship, because maybe 2 months. I can't remember the timeline exactly, but I think it forced us to get really, really deep really quickly because all we could do was talk. And I had truly never met anyone like Evan. He actually called me after a Zoom date we had. And like we had just gotten off the call and he called me and he was like, hey, I think we would make a great team. And so I would love for you to be my girlfriend. And I just was absolutely blown away. And, at the same time, I was a little scared, but I was swept off my feet by him. I was so, what is it, wooed me. And he was just also he was so strong in his faith, or at least I thought he was. And so it was like such a sweet spiritual landing place for me at that time, which is honestly what I want this podcast to be, is to be a spiritual landing place for you guys. And so I ended up telling him, I'm trying to find my relationship with God again. I'm so glad that you have such a good relationship with him, but I don't know where we're at. I don't know what I fully believe. I know I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, but beyond that, I don't know. And he was like, you know what, babe, that's okay. He was so supportive. He was like, can I answer questions? Do you want to go to a different church? Like, because I remember that summer they started opening some things up and he ended up he is a paleontologist. He was out in Montana and Utah and somewhere else, Arizona, maybe not Arizona, doing all of the dino stuff. And so we didn't get to talk for like 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks that he was out there. He would call me when he would go into town in between dig sites, but it would be very short, like maybe 20 minutes. We had such deep conversations on Zoom, on the phone. When we got to spend a little bit of time in person, I mean, literally about everything, about the world, about God, everything and in between. I've never in my life met somebody that I can have a deeper, more open and honest conversation with than I can with Evan. When he proposed in August of 2020, we officially started dating June 14th of 2020. He proposed, I think it was September 5th. I was shocked, but not really. Like I can't even put into words. Like I just knew in my soul, deep in my soul, that he was the person that I was meant to be with. It was a no-brainer. I just remember being so happy and my relationship with God was strengthened. I was learning about him and I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole entire teaching of Christianity that actually I do align with. And what's in the Bible is actually nothing like these mainstream Christians have told me. And Jesus looks a lot different than I thought he looked. And so I just was like I was high on life, man. I had a true partner in life and in Christ. I felt like I had an incredible family and his family was just amazing. I just felt so blessed. I thought I had a perfect life at this point. And I'm sure you know what's coming after that is, of course, it all came crashing down pretty quickly. I thought I had my lowest of lows with that past relationship, but it didn't even come close to what Evan and I would battle over the next 4 years of our marriage. It's hard to even go back and talk about, to be totally honest. I thought I had just found that steady ground, right? And then I go from being on the highest of high to the lowest of low, and I start to crumble. And there's so much like family betrayal and deception. And I'm like reliving this all now. And it's a lot to feel even now, like 4 or 5 years later. People that I loved, they just weren't who I thought they were. And so I know my story is not unique. I know that there are so many people who go through things that are so similar to this. And that's why I'm sharing this and I'm sharing my story, not to shame anyone or make anyone my past boyfriend, I'm sure he fought his own demons. Okay. This family stuff that I'm about to talk to you, I can't imagine what they had to go through in their lifetime, right? That led them up to this point. But I know that my relationship with God and where it is today, and the spiritual confidence that I have in the spiritual relationship that I have with the Lord, I know I would not have that had I not walked through this. And I know that's a tough thing to say, because when I would listen to people talk about this before, or say like, oh my gosh, well, I went through that and it's because it made me stronger. And like, that's why the Lord let me walk through it. And sometimes I call bullshit on that. The Lord doesn't want you to walk through hardship. He doesn't want anything but love for you and happiness for you. Think of a parent. If you're a parent of kids, you know you want your kid to be happy all the time. You don't ever want them to hurt, ever. That is how God is with us. That being said, there are some things in life that we cannot avoid. There are just natural consequences of the world that we live in. And there's just evil. And then there's also just evil in this world. I truly think that some of the stuff that I went through is just evil and has absolutely nothing to do with God. Yet God still showed up and showed us his character here. And that is what I want to get across, is that he showed up and he is so much more, everything and more, so much more than I could have ever realized. And we're going to talk a little bit about my spirituality, but when I got very spiritual and not necessarily Christian, part of my journey, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, there is a creator of this universe. And like, it is God. I felt most aligned in calling him God. And I, now knowing how expansive our universe is and our God is and how beautiful this life can be, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea. And so now being on the other side of all of this, it's such a beautiful thing. And I'm just so blessed to be there. So, not long after Evan and I got married, we ended up buying a house. We might have actually even signed on the house when we were engaged. It was a townhouse, like a new build. And, his parents were from Arizona, but they had lived with him. They were like his roommates, is what they called it, which I thought was so strange. But I was like, you know what? Oh, they're so close. Like, this is cute. And they're just truly best friends. So I was like, all right, whatever. But they were here in North Carolina for 2 weeks every month. And I remember asking him, is that weird for you? Like, are you okay with that? And he was like, no, like, they're really my best friends. And so I was like, oh, well, I wish my parents visited more. No offense to mom and dad, but, my parents are just busy. Like, they work a ton and they've got 2 other kids and it's hard, right? And so the first time I met them in person, it was shortly after Evan and I, like, we had our first in-person date. So maybe like July of 2020. I can't remember the exact date, but they were so fun. Oh my gosh. And like, they were so young and great, like no red flags from what I could tell, other than I will say, like, they were talking about us getting a house, which we weren't even engaged at that point. And so I was like, whoa, we've been dating for like a month, like maybe let's chill that a little bit. And then his dad, we were at Taza. His dad was like, I guess he had like figured out the math or something on, he knew how much I made, because I guess Evan made the same amount. And it was like 18,000, I think, or maybe 20 if we worked summers. I can't remember. He was saying how much of a house we could afford. And so he was talking about like how much our down payment could be. And this is like literally one of our first dinners ever. And so I was like so embarrassed because he knew my salary. And like, I don't know if you guys know, but especially in the South, we just do not talk about money like that. No one needs to know what I make or what our house is worth or what our mortgage payment is. So I was just mortified. And of course, does it actually matter if anyone knows your numbers? No, I think that is a stupid rule that the South, in air quotes, has. But I grew up very traditional, very Southern. And so I was like, oh my gosh, we don't talk about money. No. And two, like, I loved Evan, but I was a little bit like, that was a little weird. And he was like, yeah, no, he's just excited. And they're already in house buying mode. So I just kind of brushed it off. Like, literally, that was our only red flag, other than they just like to spend money. That was the other thing. But like, who doesn't, right? Like, I thought, like, you know what? If they work hard for their money, like, spend it, go for it. but they loved to shop and go out to eat and get drinks. And I mean, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so I did not grow up that way by any means. And I just I felt like, oh, okay, maybe they're just kind of, newer money and they're just really wanting to, they've come into this money and they're excited to spend it. Fast forward a month later, we're engaged. Maybe 2 months after that for initial meeting, we're engaged. And I'm like, oh, that was fast. But I truly can see it so clearly, how the Lord was working in my life. I just didn't question any of it. And I'm so glad I didn't because, like I said, Evan is the greatest gift from God, apart from my babies. And so, for, being engaged and married so quickly and it being COVID times, obviously we wanted to elope. But my mom and his mom really wanted a wedding. And so I was like, you know what? As long as maybe we keep it small and outdoors, my family has some property. I was like, you know what? That's going to be fine. We can do it at our family property that I grew up on. And I was like, as long as everybody has masks and we do temperature checks and it's all within COVID guidelines, I'm good. Because I was not about to have a super spreader. If you lived through those times, I was not of the camp that COVID did not exist. I was very much nervous about it. Did I like the masks? No, but I was not about to spread it. So, and now people were nervous to come to my wedding and a lot of people didn't. And I was totally fine with that. I was totally respectful of that. We really wanted to get married and, we did what we thought was best at the time. And, looking back, was it maybe a little reckless and dangerous? Yeah, absolutely. I'm willing to admit that. But, I think we did everything within the law and within the legal checks to have our wedding in December of 2020. So that was just a little disclaimer for everybody who's like, you got married in 2020. But none of the wedding planning, nothing went wrong. That's what's so wild. Everything fell into place. Only thing that went kind of wrong was that Evan had been attending this church in Raleigh and his parents as well. And they really wanted a pastor from that church to marry us. And so I had been attending a ton of churches online across multiple different religions and veins of Christianity virtually. And so I had been seeing, watching his church and I liked what the church had to say. So I was like, oh, I'll be open to attending a service and maybe meeting the pastor. And we ended up speaking to their pastor for missions and evangelism and told him our story. And we were so excited to get married. And oh my gosh, this was the first time I had been met with such disdain, judgment, condemnation. He said he didn't know us and that attending virtually isn't enough, even though this was COVID. They just opened their church back up. They were closed for COVID, right? They just opened it back up in the fall. They were closed through part of the summer. And so there weren't any other options. And then I was like, well, Evan's tithing. And they're like, yeah, but he's not a member. And I guess he had never gone through the membership. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought in my brain, I'm like, well, he's paying to be a part of this church. So you should maybe reconsider. And then he was, I didn't say that, but he's tithing. He's an active member of this church and this community. Yeah, he maybe hasn't joined, but we're open to joining. We like the church. And basically they were like, well, we don't know if we're going to accept you, is what he said. And then he looks us dead in the eyes and he goes, have you had premarital sex? And I was literally appalled. And I was immediately on the defensive, why do you need to know? But yeah, we are what's wrong with that? We're engaged. We love each other. He literally spent the next 20 minutes lecturing us about the sin of premarital sex and that he literally wouldn't even consider marrying us unless one, we signed a piece of paper saying that we were going to abstain from sex until our marriage. And then two, we were going to attend multiple in-person. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I want to get this right. We would attend to multiple in-person services and small groups and one-on-one sessions each week leading up to our marriage. 3, we would have to become official members of the church. 4, up our tithe to 10% of both of our incomes. Mind you, we are making, $18,000 a year. And 5, let them pray for our sin in service that day. Go sit in service and listen to that. I've literally never been so embarrassed in my entire life. And for a church whose name literally translated to the image of God, I could not believe what I was seeing, like, and hearing, and I was just becoming confident in my relationship with God again, and I'm not gonna lie, like, this knocked me right back down. I felt so shamed, so condemned, and I felt like I didn't belong, like I wasn't good enough, and I had to beg for my place in Christianity again and prove my worth, which goes right back to what I struggled with as a kid. And Evan was appalled too. He was more angry from what I can remember. Then he was like, "Well, do you want to go to the service? Like, do you want to?" And I was like, "What? No. Are you kidding me? That's not okay." But that really brought me back down. I really struggled with it. And so we ended up finding a wonderful, wonderful man named John to marry us, who was actually friends with my grandparents. And he was just such a gift from God. Oh my gosh, he was so wonderful, so sweet. And we were open for counseling, absolutely. So he ended up counseling us a little bit before we got married. But um, yeah, that experience with that other church, I was just so appalled. And so we had a great ceremony. We had the best freaking wedding. The Lord was like, I felt like he was like, I feel you feel burned, and like, I know you're struggling. So he's like, here's John. I cannot thank my DD enough for him for like connecting us, because he was just such a breath of fresh air. I do remember Evan's parents at the time being pretty upset that the pastor wouldn't marry us either. But they were also like very against premarital sex. And so I remember like we couldn't fully tell, or Evan didn't fully tell them why he wouldn't marry us. It was like the sex part of it. And I guess Evan, like his parents were very like, I remember even when we were engaged and we went out to Arizona, like they made Evan sleep on a blow up air mattress in the gym room. And I got the guest room. It was like the craziest thing. And so I was like, oh, okay, like whatever, which is very common in traditional families, right? And so again, I didn't see any issue with sex at this point still in my life. I know there's scripture that says it's for marriage and all of this stuff, but for me, I just felt my spirit did not feel like it was wrong. And that was kind of my stance on it. And so they were upset that we ended up leaving that church. I do remember that. And so they wanted us to go to another church, which was downtown, and they loved that church. And I remember we did end up stopping attending, because I remember we tried to get involved with leadership, and I tried to get into a Bible study because I was like, you know what? I was really trying not to let this bother me, right? And so they were like, oh, there's a men's Bible study that they invited Evan to. And so I was like, okay, is there like a women's study? And they were like, oh no, there's like a married couple study. And I was like, wait, what? They're like, wasn't a women's study. And so I was like, oh, is it just not right now, like in the season? And they're like, no, like I think they may have one now. But then I started looking at their leadership, and it was all men. They were like one of those churches that I think didn't believe in female leadership unless it was in families and children. And so I was like, the families and children section of the church. And so I was like, okay, I don't know if this is for me. We ended up moving on past that for our wedding. We were both just so blessed with everything. We had so much stuff. And so we were like, let's do donations for different funds, charities, and organizations. And that way, we don't need to have the money. We don't need money. We did, of course, looking back, we were broke as heck, but I just felt so weird about, I don't know, I just really wanted to do donations. And so his parents were like pissed about it. They like ended up registering us at Williams Sonoma or something, and like telling everybody we wanted Williams Sonoma cards for our couple shower. And they were like, they were telling us it was rude to not have a shower or a registry or something like that. And I was like, well, we do have a registry. It's just like different, charities that we would want people to donate to. And so I just remember that was like maybe another little red flag we had. Evan was like so upset with his mom, I remember, because she did that. But you know what? It was like, whatever. This is like normal family, like weird stuff. So I was like, okay, it's fine. Anyway, we ended up getting married. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but I really felt like everything was great. Like I said, there were those red flags that we had kind of had. I was still struggling with my faith. We ended up applying for our mortgage for that house that I talked about a little bit ago. And we had originally got a pre-approval, but I guess that's not as in-depth as a full approval. Our loan officer had initially told us that we had over $100,000. I think it was 120 upwards, even with everything included between his loan, his parents' loans, and there's like over 170,000 by the time we were said and done. And so these so there were student loans that were taken out in Evan's name that he was unaware of. The story kept changing. I think there were about 8 different stories we had until it was finally admitted to us, like, yeah, we did sign this paperwork for you. We were like, okay. I mean, and I think Evan, at the end of the day, he was okay if they had to take out loans. He was like, I wish he would have told me. I would have paid down some of that, or maybe taken the money that I made during school and put that towards loans. And, there's nothing to be embarrassed about if you need to take loans out. But as he started digging, the amount that was paid to Kansas and the amount he got mismatched the actual loans that were taken out. And so I think there was roughly, I don't want to misspeak, but $50,000 or $70,000 that was unaccounted for. And so he kept trying to ask about it, and they just freaked out. And this gutted him because he was so close. Remember, they were literally roommates, right? And so he is going through this crisis with his family. And we're brand new, married, not even a couple months. This is all happening. And I'm just trying to be the supportive wife. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? Should we not get the house? And he was like, no, I want to still get the house. And we had already picked out everything and had money down on it and that we couldn't get back. But we ended up not ending on good terms with them. I was trying to take myself out of the equation because I felt like this was really something that he and his parents needed to sort out, because the financials of it all, this all happened before I was even in the picture. And I don't want to tell that entire story because, one, it is also Evan's to tell, so we'll tell it at a different time. 2, I wasn't really involved with the financial aspect of it in the beginning. So at one point, they're going back. I mean, it's just so hard to see the person that you love being tormented. He was going and seeing a therapist at this point, and they were working together on how to communicate with his parents. And again, I was very removed from this. I mean, obviously I would talk to him and he would tell me how he was feeling and I would offer my thoughts, but he was just really struggling. And this was so hard on our marriage. I mean, being newlyweds and having all this financial stress on us, and then going through all of this, having the drama with his parents, he felt like he couldn't remember a lot of his childhood. So he was doing regular therapy and hypnotherapy. He was also at this point trying to finish up his master's thesis. And so anybody who's done a thesis knows, it is no joke. It is so much work. And because of COVID, a lot of his samples were delayed. He essentially had to do 2 years of research in 1 semester to get it done and graduate on time. And he was even a semester behind, but he had no other option because of COVID. And so he was just at his lowest point, I think, at that time in his life. And he was working so much and fighting with his parents, right? And so I remember he asked for space and they just kind of freaked out. And I mean, again, they were not parents that were just call you, text you every now and then. They were so involved in his life. And so I know it must have been really hard to kind of go from being so involved in your son's life to then them getting married. But I think they truly thought that they were, and they said this, they thought that they were going to get a daughter and not necessarily lose a son. And so I don't think that they fully respected our marriage and us trying to figure out who we were as a married couple. And they wanted, I don't want to say control, but I felt like they wanted control over what we did, where we went to church, what we were tithing, all of that stuff. And when they didn't have that, it kind of, when they talked to us, all of that, when they lost that, they really struggled with it. Okay, so this is wrapping up part 2 of my testimony, and we are going to move into the conversation Rebecca and I have to kind of digest this and unpack everything here. This section, again, there aren't a ton of details here. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty or the drama of it all. And I also don't want to tell Evan's story for him. So I'm sure you're probably leaving here with a lot of questions. Some might be answered in the next part, but um, I'm trying to make this as relevant to my testimony and my story and where God showed up and how low I was as possible without making it unnecessarily drama filled. So hopefully I did a good job of this, but you know, it's it's hard. It's a hard balance to walk. So here is the deep dive into part 2. Okay, so we just found out that I actually didn't connect the mic.
We didn't connect the mics. It was not your fault. It was a team effort.
Exactly. So if this episode sounds a little not great quality wise, it's probably because that happened. And we're gonna keep it in because we're a messy podcast and
Yeah.
it's what we do.
We're
So
a mess. We're a hot mess.
we're a hot mess, but the next ones will have our mics. So at least they're there for aesthetics.
Okay, so let's hop back into it. We are part 2 of your testimony.
Yes.
So you're essentially single for the first time.
Yeah, like 8 years.
Yeah, since you were like 14.
Yeah, 13. I mean, there were other, we broke up and I,
Right, but like
never like a real relationship.
right. So you're single. The world is shut down because of COVID. You have your dog, your family, and you're eager to learn more about your relationship with God. Okay, so what did that look like?
Yeah.
Starting this new relationship with God, or did you talk about this?
I did a little bit, maybe not like too much in detail. So I kind of just briefly touch on it. But yeah, I think I was just so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The second I was like away from him and broke up with him, I felt so free to explore my faith. And I talked a lot about how because of COVID, every church service went online. And so I could explore a lot of different churches. And I was just so excited by that because there was no pressure. I didn't have to go. I didn't have to worry about talking to people because that was like my worst fear with church. I don't know why. Everyone's so welcoming. Like, I don't want to talk to people.
Yeah.
And they can spot out a newbie.
Well, it's
So easily.
kind of an intimidating thing, especially when you're first starting, because you're like, well, everybody already knows everything. And
Yeah.
so new, but it's just, that's not the point.
Well, it felt probably a lot like when I went to school with all this like in Catholic school. So I feel like I actually just connected that.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason I get nervous going to new churches and like talking to people because I'm like, oh, there's so much history. Like, I don't want to try to break into that. And
They'll have their clicks.
yeah, exactly. But
So you have this, you're building this new faith. You've now met Evan.
yeah,
And you guys are dating over Zoom.
I presume.
You went from a relationship with a man who kind of shamed your spiritual beliefs, your religious beliefs, to a man who was so confident in his and walking in it. And I would assume he was like eager to cheer you on.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So how did that help with your, first of all, how did that feel? Like, did it feel foreign?
Foreign,
And
yes.
then how did that help with your relationship with God?
I mean, it was incredible. I don't know if I talked on this specifically, but I was just in that questioning phase. So it's actually a lot like my daughter is now. Like, what's this? Why is that? What's this? I was in that phase. And so I was asking Evan a lot of questions.
really?
Yeah. And I was like, well, why does it say this? Or why do you think this? Or why do you believe this? And I'm such a why person. And he was like, well, I don't know. And he like couldn't give me answers that were satisfactory. And I think I pushed him in his faith a little bit too. And I actually think that's part of the reason we got along so well when we were dating. I mean, we obviously hit it off very well. We vibed, but we had such deep conversation about God, about religion, about theology. And I just felt like really safe with him being able to ask those questions. Like, even if he couldn't answer it, he'd try. And I'd be like, but why? And it was just incredible to like have somebody who I always felt like I had to kind of filter what I was going to say or how I acted, or act a certain way, talk a certain way, be a certain way. And with him, I just didn't feel any of that. Like, I felt like I could truly be my authentic self, and he loved it. And it was just so refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So you guys are dating over Zoom. You eventually, well, you met each other in person. You had a class together.
Yeah, we had a class together, but we had never like dated
in person.
Yes.
Yeah. So fast forward, you dated briefly.
Yeah,
3
months.
Yes.
Officially 3 months. We were talking a little bit before that. But.
Yeah. Still, that's brief. I guess to some.
It's brief, like for me at least. You had told me, when I was in high school that I was going to date a guy for 3 months and then get engaged and then married 3 months later. I would be like, you're crazy. I am not impulsive. I am not. I'm very well thought out, not calculated, but strategic. Like in everything I do, I never just, I feel like I struggle to just buy a specific outfit. Like I need to make sure it's the right one and the right fit. And so the fact that
so you're intentional with your time.
I'm very intentional. Yes. Yeah. And
someone like would counter as what you did, like
as impulsive.
or spontaneous.
I actually look at, because I was like, why did I do that? I was so impulsive, but it wasn't. I've never been so sure about anything in my life.
And it's funny because you hear these stories of newlyweds who are like, I feel like I have a friend whose parents only knew each other for 3 months and they were married.
Yeah.
And they're like the happiest married couple.
Yeah. And I don't think that's everybody's path. I think.
No, for sure.
Everybody has their own unique path, but and And when that was our path.
And when it's your story and how it's supposed to write out, then it just flows and it works and
it worked out.
And it doesn't feel like you're fighting against like your natural tendencies to be strategic and take your time.
No, it didn't feel like that at all. I felt like, I also think that the pandemic put a lot into perspective for me, as I think it really did a lot of people, of like our time is so short here. And
we didn't know when the world was going to be normal again. If it ever would be.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, I love this person. I can see a life with him so clearly. Yeah. Why would I wait?
Yeah. Like what's
like we already know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so you're engaged and you are looking for a pastor to marry you.
Yes.
And
that's talk about this a lot.
I guess we would call it church
yeah.
comes into your story. So did you go into depth on this?
I did go into pretty deep depth on this. So I can just briefly kind of chat about my mind, like my headspace at the time, but I was just feeling so hurt and so frustrated and so defeated that I also had a little bit in this. I don't know if I talked about that. Maybe I did, but I was like, well, Evan's tithing to you guys. So like, he's kind of, I still had that mindset of like, well, he's kind of bought in. Like,
yeah,
you should be able to marry. Like, oh, he's not a member here. Well, he has been giving you money for the past. You're happy to take his money,
but you're not happy.
But you're not happy to marry us. Like,
yeah.
So which is it? Our money's green enough for you, but we're not good enough for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really common thing that I've heard people say in the church, of like, well, I don't feel good enough. Like, I'm not good enough, but my money is. And so I think that set me back a lot. Because I was like, in this beautiful new faith and so excited. And on fire for Jesus, and that
It's like the
happens.
bubble gets
Burst.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I was so embarrassed too, because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just got slut shamed too. And I had like just come into my reclaiming my like sexual energy. Like it was like destroyed in that past relationship. It was horrible. I just forced myself essentially to like endure it. And so I'm reclaiming my sexual freedom. And then here this guy comes, and my relationship with God. And I feel so good. I feel so aligned. And he comes and he just like squashes me like I'm a bug. Like, and I was like, how could Jesus do this? And I felt like he was embodying Jesus. And I felt squashed by Jesus.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to shame anyone for believing in what they believe in. But when you're in a position of authority like that, as a pastor, and you're giving a response like that to two people who just want to start their lives together, you can believe what you want to believe, but the way that we approach people, he should be held to a higher standard. And to me, when like hearing that story, it seems like he approached you guys with a little bit of ego or religious superiority.
Absolutely.
And that's so dangerous.
And I understand if he's like, hey, you know, we only marry members of the church. Are you guys interested in joining?
Yeah.
Or, you know, we typically like couples wait 6 months or something. We would be like, oh, we understand that. You have boundaries. It's your church. Like, absolutely. Like, I understand that. But that's not what happened. It was the shame that came in, the judgment, and the, well, you can still fix this. You can sign a contract that says you're not going to have sex anymore until you get married. You can tie up your tithing amount. You can come to start going to all these Bible studies and come to church and repent for this, and then we'll marry you.
It's like he was trying to sell his church, not.
Yeah. I know. And so I was like, whoa. If this is what Jesus is actually like, I don't know if I want
And
that.
this is like the whole point where you do have a position of power, like where everyone's like, all of our words
Matter.
they matter, they're powerful, like they have the ability to heal someone or hurt someone. But I think when you're a pastor and you're leading a church, you really, and a lot of pastors do take this seriously.
They do. This is just one.
There's a lot. But
There's also a ton. For every bad one, I think there are multiple good.
Yes. And I just feel like,
You still at that church, by the way.
yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure it aligns with your church. And that's fine. You know what? If I always think, I'm like, you know what? If they are bringing people closer to God in their way, like, I think that the Lord has purpose for every single person on this earth. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. And so their purpose is just not in line with what mine is. And so we removed ourselves from that. But I think people feel where the issue comes in is people feel like it's either that way or no way, or that is the only right way, which is what they kind of alluded to, is like their belief in Christianity is, their version of Christianity is the only right way.
Yeah.
And that's just not true,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right.
And that's what it just felt so far from what I aligned with. And I'm so thankful that Evan was open to leaving that church. 'Cause he was just like shocked too.
Yeah.
And he had actually never been with anybody before me. And so I think he was already feeling a lot of shame as well internally. Actually, no, I don't know if they talked about that.
No, he told me, he said, well, he told us.
He didn't regret it though. Like
He said, if I feel like this is wrong, then I'll regret it. And I never did.
Yeah. See, I don't think he ever had regret. I think he just had that internal of like, oh, this is bad.
Right.
But he's like, I never actually felt like I was doing a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so I think the church kind of coming in
and shaming him for that. And then him being like, but my spirit, I feel I've never felt more aligned.
Yeah.
It's like, you always say two truths. Maybe there's two truths there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, purity culture, I can see the benefits in it when you're not shaming or condemning someone into it. But if it's there and you know what their past looks like and purity is not in their past, why would purity
shame?
No, exactly. What is that going to change? I can't go back and not be a virgin, become a virgin again. Right. And like, it's kind of like with having a baby out of wedlock. It's like, so I will never apologize for that. No, like, it's the most insane thing.
Yeah.
And I don't
think Jesus
wants me to, you know? Yes. So that's such a hard pill to swallow. It really is. Because it's so much more in depth. We can take that all different kind of ways and dissect it. And I don't want to shame him either, you know, the pastor.
Right.
I think he really felt like he was doing what he was called to do. He truly believes that. And I think he was trying to walk in his beliefs. And I think in a twisted way, in my point of view, he was bending because he was like, well, if you do this, this, and this, I think I can marry you. But like, what chains to live in as a pastor? I can only help them if they do this, 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 and this. Which is like Pharisee mentality, almost. I mean, obviously not to that extent, but like, I can't imagine. And I just know that Jesus, if he saw somebody who needed help or was asking for someone to marry them, he would never be like, oh, well, are you pure?
Yeah.
Are you giving enough to the church? Are you members? Are you going to Bible study? No. He would just meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
And so I think my biggest takeaway from all of that was, it set me back, but I think that was also a pivotal point that I kind of came back from. As like, it knocked me back, but then I was like, oh no, this is not what it's meant to be. And I kind of set out on a mission. And we ended up finding another church. That's great. You know, it's nice, but they didn't believe in female leadership.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't know if that really aligns. Wonderful people. So sweet. And, you know, we thought about joining, and I was reading their, you know, packet that has all their beliefs. And I was like, they kept saying everyone was welcome, but not really. They were like, everyone's welcome, but if you come in and you are these things, we will make sure the Lord convicts you. I know. It's scary. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I can't imagine. And I was like, ooh, I don't remember that. He was like, oh no, not again. It's so hard. People don't talk about how hard it is to find a church that really fits your. And it's not like you go into church and it's like they have to believe every single thing. No. You don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. A lot of people don't feel that way. But there are some non-negotiable, like basic human beliefs that you're like, I can't support this church if when I leave this church I don't believe it. It's not going to serve you well going there and forming a community of peers. They're not going to like me either. Like we're not in alignment. The point of church and fellowship is so powerful and so important, but you have to find your people. That are like-minded and they believe in what you believe in and they walk in the same way you walk. And for me, it's like all I want to do is walk like Jesus. And sometimes it's just bigger than that when it comes to the church. It is. Like there's just not bigger than that. I guess I should say there's just so much more that comes into play than simply just loving the Lord and loving others. I agree. It's like, why do you have to add all of these rules and
regulations and stipulations.
But also,
and,
like you said, I don't want you to bend for me.
Mhm.
I don't want you to
And-
bend your beliefs
exactly.
and your morals and your values. I don't want you to change to make me feel comfortable.
Exactly.
I will find a space
that is meant for me.
where I feel comfortable and where I belong.
But there's no need for shame there either.
I don't shame you for believing this way. It's just not for me.
Yeah, and if he had approached that of like, oh my God, totally, exactly like I said, it would have been a whole other story. I would have been like, I probably would have been like, that kind of stings.
Yeah.
But we would have moved on,
Right.
you know? But we ended up, I talked about John a lot, but the person who ended up marrying us, he was just such a godsend. He was such a wonderful, wonderful man and so faithful. And so, like he was the first person that actually explained sin to me in a way that made sense and was not this like horrible negative connotation of like the worst thing in the world. Like, you know, again, I'm not trying to say sin is good, but he just explained it as it was a bridge between us and God. And
Anything that separates or distracts.
and he was like, you know, there's a wide range. It can be something as simple as, you know, you're just getting distracted.
Yeah.
And, you know, but then it can go all the way to murder, right? Like and it looks different for everybody. And I've never heard that.
Yeah, we need to do a deep dive on that.
Yeah.
Because I know we have a lot of similar
Beliefs.
feelings on that.
All right. Next question.
Next question. Okay, so you and Owen are in the Newlywed bliss. The world is starting to come out of COVID slowly. You're building a new house.
Yeah.
This all seems like the start to building the foundation of your lives together,
Yeah.
not just physically, but spiritually. Then you walk into a family crisis that we'll kind of deep dive in
The next episode,
Yeah. How did this seem to shake your foundation at the time, but also looking back, did it make your foundation stronger?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Absolutely. Which is crazy. I'm at the point of saying that now because I truly never thought I would get here. I mean, it's been years since all of that happened. And when I recorded my testimony, I think at the end, I was like sweating bullets because just reliving all of that trauma, it's so hard. And so my foundation was, you know, we're on the right. And I think so many people's stories look like this and nobody really openly talks about how you get close to God and then you drift off. And then you get close to God again and then you're like, oh, wait, no. Oh my gosh. And it's
like backsliding, some would call it.
Yeah, but it's not like it's so normal. And I didn't think that was normal, at least at the time. And so I'm thinking I'm like the worst Christian in the world because I'm having all these doubts. I'm having all this stuff is happening to me. And I thought, well, maybe it is because I'm sinning. Maybe I'm like not living this life I'm supposed to live and God's punishing me. And I don't even think I touched on that. And actually maybe towards the end of on one of the other episodes, but I just felt like God was punishing me. And I was like, gosh, do I believe in a God that punishes like this?
Yeah. So what's your answer?
No, he does not punish. He's not. The God that I have come to know and love, and he is not a God of anything other than love and compassion and grace. And all of those other thoughts were not my thoughts. They were straight from the devil.
Yeah.
And so having all of that happen, which we'll dive into later in the next episode, it's just, I actually am so thankful I went through all of that because it built me into who I am, like my identity. I actually found really my voice and who I am and my worth and my value. I found who I am in Christ, in God. But then the foundation that Evan and I have in our marriage is like unshakable now. And we would not have that without it.
Yeah. Even though at the time it probably felt like, are we going to even make it through
I'm
this?
shocked we're still married, to be totally honest, with how much we went through.
Yeah.
But I'm not because God.
Because God.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, yay. So this wraps up our second part
yeah.
of your testimony, and we will just head right over to part 3 because
Part
we are
3.
eager to leave the next part. Exactly.
Thanks for being here with us today. If something resonated, maybe a sentence, a silence, or a story, hold on to that. If you felt seen or stirred or simply curious, we hope you'll join us again. Until then, stay open, stay tender, and remember, there's always a seat for you at the table.